Thank you for watching. My name is Glenn Morgan, and this is We the Govern. So today we are going to be going to my home county of Thurston County in Washington State and focusing on a local issue that I think matters to you if you live here, and if you don't live here, the basic issues that we're addressing in Thurston County are probably very similarly represented to wherever you live, because unfortunately these stories do tend to rhyme and echo throughout local government. So the story I'm focusing on right now is, of course, how our Thurston County commissioners are botching the budget, which is pretty common behavior here in this county, and it's something that we need to focus on and fix, probably fix for them and despite them, and it's going to take some work. The recent stories in the newspaper came from Tuesday's commissioner meeting, which was flooded with a bunch of people in the community who are angry about the proposed cuts to the sheriff's office, which of course is always the first thing that the county commissioners propose every single time they run into any kind of financial difficulties. Cutting public safety seems to always be their high priority. So that's why a lot of people are showing up, because most people realize if there's one function in government that they would prefer to actually have exist, it's the ability of the sheriff's office to actually come out and arrest bad guys. At least it saves us from having to shoot more of them here. And in case you were at this public hearing, here's one of just a photo that I had took of another person took while they were there today, and it was worth taking a look at. A lot of people were showing up. They're obviously upset and frustrated with the proposed budget cuts in public safety. And of course, we're just barely getting to the beginning of what's going on here. Now, if you want to watch the rest of the story, before you do, please hit the like and subscribe button down below if you haven't done so already. And if you know anybody who lives in Thurston County, please make sure you share this video with them, because I think this is something that they need to know. Thank you so much for watching and sharing these stories, because I think even local stories like this have a lot of value to them and people can learn quite a bit. Now, if you don't know where Thurston County is, it's located south of Pierce, north of Lewis County. It is where our state capital of Olympia is located. It's where I live, and center of the universe for me. Let's talk about what is actually going on here, because I've done a lot of stories about these guys before. This is an example. I'm trying to find out where the missing millions went in the Atrium building, which is where they're located right now, because we know a bunch of money disappeared, and nobody's really sure exactly where it went or what it went for, beyond just the overall incompetence with putting this building together and all the disastrous financial choices that were made at the time. I've done a lot of stories about Thurston County, and it includes stories about some of the clowns that have been elected there. We have some of the worst people probably ever put into local government, and they are currently on the Thurston County Commission. Not all of them, but at least 3 of them are complete and silly clowns. And I've done plenty of stories on some of these guys. There's plenty to talk about with them, unfortunately. The more you get to know them, the more you have to laugh at them, and maybe you cry a little bit too. Because after all, it's our tax dollars they're wasting and squandering, and it is sort of embarrassing to have people like this in public office. But at the same time, we have to look at Thurston County and realize that there are some basic challenges that are being represented here, and they aren't totally wrong. One of them, though, that's not being discussed by the county commissioners is the fact there's no budget published. As of the time I'm doing this video, a budget that should have been published a month and a half ago still doesn't exist. Maybe they're going to have a preliminary one by tomorrow or the next day, who knows, but it makes it really difficult to actually go in and to see what they're talking about. If they claim that there's a shortfall, what are you actually distributing the money into the various departments, and how are you currently squandering the tax dollars that you're planning to extract from us next year? They don't know. Nobody's proposed anything, and it's not public anywhere. In addition, it's complicated by the fact that Thurston County used to have an online budget kind of tracking program that you could go in and see things. They've gotten rid of that. It's the exact opposite of transparency. Nobody knows what's going on, probably because there's so much money that gets wasted here. It is embarrassing for them to actually talk about. So the budget being published is actually an important thing. Second, the county is claiming that they're short $37 million, or maybe it's $34 million. Who knows? We got a staff infection that's telling the county commissioners that it's somewhere in this ballpark, but nobody really knows because there's no numbers published. It's all just an imaginary game at this point in time. Of course, though, as a direct result of this, they're demanding very sloppy cuts to budget. And this I want to talk about, because across the board budget cuts, regardless of agency or division or department, is sloppy. It's lazy too, because it's a lack of awareness on priorities of government. And part of this is because the bureaucracy and the unions, they don't want to say that one part of government's more important, even though it's self-evident and obvious that public safety is actually the most important part of local government that you have. Now, it's not the only thing. It doesn't mean that you don't have other things. We need our roads to actually work. It'd be nice if our bridges didn't fall down. It would be nice if we actually had somebody working in the planning department who was sane and normal, but at the same time, that's not what they do. They just do these sloppy across-the-board budget cuts. Same problem the state has with Governor Gregoire or Governor Ferguson. This is lazy, it's sloppy, and it's not actually a solution when you're trying to address some of these issues. Finally, we have the inevitable. Basically, this is really what the goal is lazy bureaucrats and politicians, whether they're clowns or not. The typical approach is they really want a tax increase. They use this hyped up, sloppy, across-the-board budget cut drama to encourage people to accept a nasty tax increase that they can't initially propose. So that's kind of the game that's actually going on here right now. Now, one of the challenges, of course, and I try to bring this up, we don't absolutely have to elect clowns to government, despite the history of Thurston County, where it's not an infrequent outcome, but we've recently elected 3 of these 5 commissioners are truly some of the most clownish people I've ever seen in government anywhere in Washington State. And that's an unfortunate outcome of very bad choices, both on the ballot and just choices in general. And the voters are going to have to change at least the 3 clowns. We have another commissioner that basically works too much as a firefighter part-time for another $100,000. And so one of the problems you have there is that his attention is split. And this is just something we're going to have to work on, and we can get into more detail on that. I've done plenty of stories about the clown commissioners. However, the other part of the staff infection that Thurston County has is actually a planning code enforcement department that exists mostly to extort the cash and destroy the future of Thurston County. And let me get into this very specifically because there is a poison that exists within that department. And I don't know if it's just they have too many Evergreen State College students there who are unemployable anywhere else. I really just don't know. But that department has over 4,000 some odd permits that they just, for years, that just sit there and languish. And meanwhile, the staff willfully extorts cash, they lie to people, they try to convince the desperate property owner or business owner who wants to build this place. They throw every roadblock and obstacle that they can fictionally invent, dramatically increase. Everything is about destroying the future of the community and extracting as much cash from the people along the way. It's just a terrible, poisonous behavior that exists there. And it's one of the reasons why the growth rate in Thurston County gets retarded to the point that the taxes and the tax receipts are going to be affected. It's a real serious problem. And when it comes to staph infections, there's no greater infection than the infection that exists inside the planning department. So let's go into this a little bit more, because when I talk about staph infection, I'm really talking about the staff even below the elected officials. There are millions of dollars that are missing and wasted regularly in Thurston County. They aren't just always stolen like they are at the Atrium building where nobody can figure out who got it. And I'm not even talking about the fraud that's been exposed by some of the grant grifting operations. I'm just talking about flat out waste and sloppy expenditures. It's not good, and there's plenty of opportunity to save money there. But of course, bureaucrats are always going to be unwilling to go and fix the problems. It's not their money. They don't care. It's just a common problem that we have in Thurston County, not unique to Thurston County. That behavior and that staph infection that exists in the bureaucracy here is not completely unique. It just happens to be where I live, so I focus on it. And it's one thing that we have to talk about. But these are basically the core staph infection that we have. At the same time, you also still have very serious issues and things that have to be done in the county. Obviously, public safety being number one. This is why so many people did show up at the county commission meeting against the cuts in the sheriff's department, because it was already willfully and substantially underfunded considering the population and geography of Thurston County. If you don't have enough sheriff deputies on the road, that means the citizens of Thurston County are both victimized by criminals and they have to keep shooting them. And so it would be nice if we had more deputies so that they could arrest the people and the criminals so we don't have to shoot them all. And it's just one of those things that would really improve the community substantially if we had a more functioning, supported sheriff's department, which I actually think is pretty good right now. But it also happens to be one of the few aspects of local government that pretty much most people that actually live in the county, it's about half the county lives in this rural or suburban area that deals with the sheriff's department a lot. They do actually want the sheriff's department funded. It is kind of the core function of government, but of course it's always the first place that commissioners are going to try to cut. There's nothing really terribly unique about dumb proposals that come out of county Thurston County, and I know other governments do it too, and I can talk about those individually, but I did the story here just a few years ago, actually, over here, on a really dumb idea for a $422 million proposal that we were able to expose back in 2015. It didn't go anywhere, but this is common. Unfortunately, these dumb ideas get recirculated through government, and they do come out into all kinds of bad ideas later. So let's talk about some things that you actually can do, I think, to address this issue right away, and then some of this we're going to have to grind on a little bit over time. Number one, stop the empire building on Plum Street. And what I'm referring to there is the Thurston County staph infection just inevitably keeps pushing towards trying to expand the number of buildings that they can turn into real estate fiascos. There is no jurisdiction, I think, in Washington State with a worse track record for botching buildings than Thurston County. If there's any group of people that should be allowed nowhere near any new building, whether that's TI work, building from scratch, rebuilding it, purchasing it, incompetence is, and just disasters are the only outcome Thurston County's ever had. From the 3400 building to the old jail that was a national mocking. Thurston County was the nationally mocked county for the entire nation for over our jail building disaster. Or maybe it's the atrium building right now where millions went missing, and I'm sure it's no coincidence that the county manager, the finance director, and the county attorney all suddenly quit at the same time because people were actually looking into the missing millions and trying to figure out who pocketed them. Sure, that's totally a coincidence. Now, let's go on, because that's not the only thing. Emphasizing the fact that we should not be making cuts to public safety, particularly now with a lot of crime going on, with a crime wave that's been going on. We want a functioning, well-supported, well-funded, properly funded, doesn't have to be overly funded, but it does need to be properly funded for public safety. I think that's important. Number three, new taxes are insane. We do not need new taxes, and I promise, this is something I'm going to tell you for sure, I will absolutely dedicate next year to focusing, if they're dumb enough to actually propose some kind of tax increase, which will have to go to the ballot, I will absolutely be excited and happy to lead the campaign against that tax increase. And one part of that campaign would be simply educating everybody that lives in Thurston County systematically, day after day, week after week, all the dumb financial disasters that the elected officials in Thurston County have made just in the last few years. And there is an unlimited supply of these stories. So I just think people need to know exactly how much they've wasted before any kind of tax proposal is ever seriously considered, and it just needs to be exposed far and wide. Finally, and I think this is actually the important thing, that we can crowdsource in Thurston County to do a better job, and you can do this where you live, in whatever jurisdiction you live in. Dig deep into the detailed expenditures, looking through the historical voucher records and basically the county checkbook, for lack of a better reference point, and detail how we can actually make those cuts and eliminate a lot of the wasteful expenditures that are currently going on. This is actually a good experience if you've had any DOGE Washington training and you've listened to some of the training that I've had in the past. Thurston County should be just another county that we experiment on, where we pull through all these records and go through and start to identify our own cuts. Listen, the people who work there are egregiously incompetent and probably incapable in every way. Maybe they don't understand math, maybe they just don't care, maybe it's not their money and that's why they don't want to deal with it, or there's some other influence that they have inside of their jurisdiction, whatever their area they're covering, that they're unwilling to actually look through in any kind of objective way and make cuts that make sense. So we can't certainly can't trust the county commissioners. You definitely can't trust a staph infection. So let's just make our own proposals that we start to make and make it very clear that these are the cuts that can be done. And it's really good because you get in there and get involved and you start to pay attention to what Thurston County is actually doing, or if you do the same thing where you live in your jurisdiction. Listen, this is just about making an impact and showing up. And it's an easy part that anybody can participate in. And crowdsourcing it makes it more fun. We can compare notes. You can have coffee parties. We can mock and laugh at the stupidity of the incompetence of our bureaucrats in this county, and probably get further justification for why you shouldn't hire Evergreen State College grads, especially in government. But nevertheless, regardless of what we discover and find, we just go down the rabbit hole of truth and start to expose it. We can find $37 million in cuts without any problem at all. If it's $45 million, we can find that many cuts too. We will do our part as the citizens who live here, and frankly, it's a good experience. But you gotta be able and willing to go and show up to do it. Because, as I always say, the future belongs to those who show up.